Hi, so today I rambled a lot. As I was editing the video, I realized that what I was saying doesn't really make sense and I just got stuck in circles. I'll try explaining it better tomorrow. I already have some ideas. But just a disclaimer, it's long, it doesn't really make much sense. I'll probably repeat it tomorrow. If you still want to watch it, that's great. Thank you very much. If not, you can just wait until tomorrow and I'll try to formulate my ideas a bit better. Thanks. Hello, day 11. Today I wanted to talk about something that I find is more and more a core understanding of how people work and something that I've struggled with lately, but also for the long term, and I think is the root of a lot of people's unhappiness. And that thing is expectations. So what does that mean? You go to a party and it's not quite as good as you expected. So you talk to someone, but you don't quite get the person right. So you expect him to talk about something different, to have different interests, and so you don't really communicate well. You go to a new job and you're not as excited because it's not what you thought it would be. And like a lot of the unhappiness that people perceive, in my opinion, is because they expected something else. And this could be very basic stuff, that you expected the person to say something else, to think something else. So it could be about you expecting others or other things to do something else. But you could also have high expectations of yourself. And that's also bad. So what does that mean? You expect yourself to do well at something, but it doesn't happen. You expect to be good enough to where people will like you, or something good will happen, or you will win first place, or whatever that is. But it doesn't quite happen. And that's where disappointment comes from. Because something you thought would happen didn't. Or something you thought would never happen does. I think that gives a much better view on what people mean when they say that you have to live in the moment. Because that's just a fancy and cryptic, really cryptic way, in my opinion, of saying that you don't have any expectations set. So you don't expect anything big out of it. You just look forward to whatever it brings. And it's really strange to leave the future open like that, but that's really how I think it works. Where if you just know that a ton of things could happen and you don't expect any of them to happen, you just enjoy going with the flow, that's where much more happiness can be found. So I think a lot of people are not getting enough of this free flow. So they have to plan everything. They have to organize everything. They count their chances. And I think that's a part of modern society, just counting all the numbers, looking at the percentage chance, looking at the number of people, the amount of cash they have, like the total value of their property or whatever it is. People really like numbers. And it's not bad. For a lot of time, it was really uncertain. And now people just quantify everything. But just because something has a 60% chance of happening, that's a whole other thing than you expecting it to happen. So I think that people overestimate based on probability and set their expectations way too high. Also, I think that the past few generations have really set high expectations on their kids. And so consequently, people have really learned to set the expectations high for themselves and for others. Whereas if you just let it go, people suddenly seem a lot nicer because they no longer deviate from what you thought would happen or what they would do. So let's say you have a friend, you have a tough situation, and you expect them to support you, for example, but they don't. So suddenly you expected them to, and now you're disappointed because they didn't. Whereas if you don't expect anything from them and see how they react, maybe them not accepting it makes it a lot more not enjoyable, but much more of a learning experience. So it's much easier to learn when you actually see someone respond in a way that you didn't maybe expect, but you didn't you weren't counting on it, I would say. So it might surprise you. You weren't counting on it, maybe, but it's not like you expected them to do that, and if they didn't, you get mad. And I think that this misalignment of what people think the world will be like or is like, and what actually happens afterward, is where so much frustration comes from. I could see this on people around me. I can see this on myself. I've only recently figured out how to look for it. It's not an easy thing to get in your head. So when you see someone who's mad, you first have to think about, consciously think. It doesn't come easy. It doesn't come naturally. The natural thing is to get angry as well and expect things and then be mad when they don't happen. But it takes a lot of effort and a lot of practice, which I don't have yet, to be able to consciously calm yourself and figure out, okay, so this person did that because of some other things, maybe, or even because they didn't expect something to happen. I'll give you a specific example in this case. So over the weekend, we went to visit a dog exhibition. A lot of dogs were shown, and my girlfriend pointed out that the organizer was getting really mad. And first off, it seemed like he's a real douche. But then I looked around and saw that the hall was crazy big, and the acoustics were terrible, so nobody could hear what the other person was saying. There was a loud microphone echo in the background, so everything was being canceled out, and a ton of people were swarming around him, and people didn't really know what to do because 4 different signs said 4 different things. And overall, it took a bit of effort, but I figured out that the person probably was telling something to other people for the 4th or 5th time, and they still didn't hear him because they couldn't comprehend. And he was expecting the management of the building to figure it out, or the building to work, probably. That's what I was thinking. So what if, that's the big contradiction to expectations. What if the person is a really nice guy, but he had to repeat himself over and over and over again just because the acoustics were terrible, nobody could hear him, he couldn't do his job properly, and a lot of people were counting on it, and he just takes his job seriously. And I think that is a real problem, to look at it from that way, just to stop and pause and think about the fact that, what if something is different than what my first expectation would be. Okay, that guy's mad because he's a douche. Well, no. What if that guy's mad because other things don't work and he's just getting the brunt of it, so to speak? How to properly spot this? I think that to spot such a thing, you need to actively look for it, first of all, when you do it. And then you can figure out slowly when others do. Maybe you're lucky. Maybe you can do that naturally. From what I've noticed, a lot of people can't. I sure couldn't. And what that means is, whenever you get angry, whenever you get disappointed, whenever you get frustrated that things are not going your way, maybe think about, what did you expect to happen, and why did you set your expectations that way? Because I don't think that it's an uncancelable nature. That's not something that's built in. That's something that's built because people have severely different expectations from the same situation, and that to me implies that it's different according to what they've lived through, according to their background, their family, their friends, their social circle, wherever they grew up with. It could be a lot of things. But the outcome is that I think if people can learn it, people can relearn it to do it in other ways. And at best, maybe even learn to not expect much, to know what you're going into, know what could happen, but not expecting any of them to happen and just enjoying whatever comes out, because people really try to be controlling. I mean, the future is uncertain and there's a lot of bad outcomes, so naturally people will try to, as much as they can, to avoid the bad ones and look for the good ones. But the bad and the good is very subjective according to what they want to achieve. So if I could learn to look at it from the perspective that maybe if I could make the best of whatever happens, so make the best of it, then in that case, I don't really care, even if a bad thing happens or not the best thing for me, because I can still make that work, because that's not in my hands. And once again, that's about accepting that you can't control everything. So some things just have to go, and you have to learn to adapt to them. Whereas with expectations, when something else happens that you can't control, you just get mad that you're not God. I don't know. So yeah, it's been on my mind a lot lately. I think that's something that's not talked about at all, probably. And I think that it should deserve a lot of attention from a lot of people who are very frustrated with everything around them. Because instead of blaming the world, I think that with lowering your expectations and just enjoying whatever happens, I think that that could really help people to get over it, basically. I think just going with the flow would make life a lot easier and a lot less stressful to a lot of folks. It's my personal view of the world, and it encapsulates what a lot of the different teachings say, because you can explain meditation with it, you can explain living in the moment with it, you can explain why people are frustrated, sad, unhappy, and there's just so much. I found that it's such a basic principle of making two different portraits of the world. One where something is the perfect way in which you expect things to happen and prepare for them, and then the other is the uncontrollable maw where you just can't do anything about it and things go to hell real fast. And if you're not prepared to adapt to the situation, instead of making the best of it, you might as well make the worst of it, because you're going to push for that ideal spot. And instead of minimizing your losses, you're going to double down and mess it up even further. Whereas most of the time, just getting an average situation, so making the best out of a bad one and making it like not really that terrible, would be much better for you than to bet everything on one outcome, and as soon as that doesn't happen, you're going to shit. And I think a lot of people glorify those ones that gamble on everything and out of sheer luck somehow make it repeatedly through that betting on an outcome and then that outcome happening. Whereas if you just minimized your losses, accepted that, and didn't have high expectations for your particular outcome, then maybe you would have been much happier in the long run. Because I think this is also a lot about short-term happiness versus that long-term fulfillment, where short-term should be about you being really happy for 5 minutes, for a week, and then that wearing off. So you're going for a goal that you set for yourself, that goal happens, and then you set another one until that doesn't happen, and then you're frustrated because the world doesn't work how you wanted it to. Whereas if you just make the best of it and go after that long-term sustainment, then even if something goes wrong, it's still an enjoyable period, chasing after something and it going wrong, because you still get something out of it, and it doesn't mess up your life and your future decisions because you start from a worse point. I'm repeating myself now, so I'm going to cut it there. But I think noticing such things consciously makes you be a lot more aware of what other people might be thinking. So I would say that it's a form of empathy to think about these things. And I've been trying it to some success. But I really think that this could help some of the people that just really don't know why they're frustrated. Maybe it's just because they're expecting stuff to happen and being frustrated when it doesn't. And instead of saying, okay, so I'm not that good at predicting, maybe I should just learn to adapt, they double down, and then they go into a real deep pitfall of unhappiness, of blaming it on everyone, and on just not enjoying what's happening to them. And I think that's wasting your time. And unlike anything else, you don't get that back. Yeah, so in case you stuck all the way to the end, congratulations. I hope it helps you. And I'm wishing you a great week. Goodbye.